Hello and welcome to the program Face the Nation. My name is Monica Chanda. Focus on the program will be on Zimbabwe's land tenure implementation process. And we have invited the Land Tenure Implementation Committee Chairperson, Mr. Kudakwashe Tagwirei. Welcome to Face the Nation.
Thank you.
And we are going to be starting the conversation, understanding the land tenure implementation process, obviously wanting to have an overview of it. And what brought about this initiative?
Well, the country implemented a historic land reform program, after which about 380,000 farmers were allocated this land. The land is over 10 million hectares, actually. And after that, a few challenges were encountered, one of which the transfer of this land from the beneficiaries to their their children or their spouses was proved to be very difficult. There was no funding, appropriate funding from this very land that had been allocated to them. And also, a lot of war veterans ended up losing some of their land, maybe by misallocation or otherwise. And so the president then decided that we need to look at this process and see whether we can be able to allow investment onto the land, and that government does not continually bail out the farmers as we go along. So that's really what brought about this process, I believe, because it was the president's decision.
Well, so many critical issues that we want to highlight, but then obviously there are certain key components that make up this process. Walk us through those key components, obviously understanding the tenure security implementation itself.
Well, maybe let me just go back a little bit. The government, through the Land Acquisition Act, then went on to give 99-year leases and offer letters. Now, an offer is just that, an offer. Okay, so the recipients of those offer letters were not able to go and access finance. And they could also were not able to transfer that land. So our main mandate was to make sure that we make sure that the farmers are able to do just that, to be able to transfer the land. If they want to sell it, they should be able to do it. If they want to go and raise finance, they should be able to do that. They should not be constantly going to government to ask for finance. And so our role was to look for a process that gives a security of tenure document. And what we then did is that we went through the process of, we went through the various laws that are there already in government and in this country. And we then realized that we actually have all the laws that support farmers to actually get a title deed. And that's what we proposed, and then the president accepted that.
But are there specific laws? Maybe highlight those, because we want to understand these laws that you're talking to. What specifics are to these laws?
Well, the acquisition of land was done through Section 72 of the Constitution. But in terms of allocation of the land, you then go to Chapter 16 of the Constitution, which starts at around about 288, Section 288 to about 297. And so those are the sections that deal with how land is allocated. Like, for instance, if you go to 289, we are looking at who is a beneficiary. And the beneficiary is really a citizen of Zimbabwe. Okay? And then if you go to Section 292, you will then realize that the land must actually be alienated, okay, to this citizen. And 293 will then tell you that only one family can then receive that farm. Okay, so you can go through that chapter, and it will really explain to you very simply how one should be able to get a title. And that's what we did. We just looked at those laws and we said, okay, I think everything that needs to be there within the laws is already provided for, and we just then looked at it and said, okay, the government must just implement, and we are assisting to do that.
Granted. So we are looking at the land tenure implementation process itself, and no country can have a land tenure system without certain strategies in place. We'll cite certain examples. In Africa, maybe Kenya, we know that they've also had some successful land tenure implementation processes. So the question rather is, how then are you going to roll out this whole program? You're talking about A1, you're talking about A2, you're also talking about the communal farmer itself.
Okay, so what we did is that, okay, before, I really need to take you a little bit back, okay?
Please do.
This process has been going on for a while, okay? Many people think that the president just woke up yesterday and said, oh, okay, you must have land tenure. No, there is a process. I come from an IT background, applications, that is. And you have processes that you follow when you are trying to bring about a solution: feasibility study, analysis, design, implementation. So the government has been going through these processes of analysis, designs, feasibility analysis, design, of exactly what a tenure system we should have in the country. We are just coming in the implementation side. But what the government did, coming to answer your question, is that they looked at many countries who have implemented such kind of systems. You spoke about Kenya, Rwanda. I'll talk about Morocco as well. And all of them have the good side of those implementations, and there are some elements which we thought we could do better. And so the government then came up with an idea that we will just mainly focus on two aspects initially. Because other countries have done communal land, we are not going to be looking at communal land at the moment. We are looking at primarily the commercial aspect of this land, which is about 10 million hectares of land. And then further on, we are going to be looking at the urban development side, where about 52,000 hectares have been allocated to do that. So these are the two things that we then decided, okay, that's what the president decided. He then decided that we're going to focus on those two elements. And that's what this committee has been mandated to do.
You spoke about the beneficiaries. Walk us through some of those beneficiaries. What does this exercise look like in terms of those beneficiaries?
The beneficiaries are mainly the war veterans, women, children, or children of war veterans, civil society, and just anyone in general. In fact, let me say this to you. Anyone who really wanted to farm when they applied at that time were able to be allocated this land. But I must say that this committee has no mandate to allocate land. We don't allocate land. The land is allocated through land commission and indeed agriculture. We don't do that. We are just mainly focusing on making sure that this land is given appropriate tenure. And we have decided that we are going to do a deed of transfer. Okay. And so because of that, we then incorporate justice, the deed registry. We incorporate local government, because we're going to be looking at the land, the urban development, and also incorporate Minister of Finance. So that's what an implementation does. It looks at all these aspects and makes sure that it is done properly. But remember, we don't allocate land.
You had to specify, actually elaborate on that and make sure that they understand you don't implement that. But let's still touch on the process itself, because while you don't have the mandate of allocating, speaking to the constitutional provision itself, ensuring that land ownership itself, those rights, you did cite some of the sections of the Constitution, 289, 293, 295, obviously. The issue of granting of land, fairness of ownership. We're talking about the implementation and avoiding favoritism. Your committee is supposed to ensure that. So how are you going to make sure there's no misuse whatsoever?
Okay, again, I'm going to say to you, Monica, that we don't look at that. That is looked at by the Land Commission.
But how do you come in?
We come in to ensure that the piece of land that has been allocated to a specific family is given in a proper security of tenure document that is acceptable to the banks, and that is also acceptable whenever they actually want to transfer this land to someone else, whom they may choose. That's where we come in. We don't allocate. We don't even receive complaints. Oh, I didn't get, I was not properly allocated this land. We don't look at that. We make sure that the survey, we will look at the survey, make sure that there are pegs to ensure that this person is really gotten the piece of land that the Minister of Agriculture has intended to give it to him, and then we make sure that they have an adequate title. That's where we end. That's where we begin, that's where we end.
Are you more like administrators?
No, we are implementers.
Implementers?
Yes.
Now, with being an implementer, there have been reports, the creation of parallel structures in the administration of these title deeds, the land tenure itself. And let's talk to even being in line with the Constitution itself, governance statutes of the country. Are there the safeguards in place? Because while we are hearing certain sectors saying that, no, this land tenure system, something is wrong. There are certain parallel structures. We want to hear from you, Mr. Tagwirei.
All the laws that need to be there. Remember what I said. We looked at what are the laws that are there that will allow for one to have an adequate land tenure on their farm. You know, before I came here, I was looking at this word alienate. So if you go to chapter 6,
I will have to hold your thoughts there. Hold your train of thoughts. We will take a short break, and when we come back, you take us through and make us understand. Okay. Are those parallel structures really what they say are there or not? This is Face the Nation. We'll be right back after these messages. Welcome back. The program is Face the Nation, and as we look at Zimbabwe's land tenure implementation process, we have invited the chairperson of the Land Tenure Implementation Committee, Mr. Kudakwashe Tagwirei. Once again, thank you for joining us. And just before the break, we were touching on reports on parallel structures, certain parallel structures that are said to have been created in the administration of issues to do with land. Looking at the process itself, and responding to some of those reports, what have you to say to that? Okay,
I need you to maybe elaborate what parallel structures are that you're talking about, because we don't see any. I don't know if is there any.
The parallel structures themselves, because even given the issue of parallel structures, one will say there is a ministry already responsible to the process itself in terms of land. And they will say, aren't you then doubling? Aren't you contradicting each other, even with the ministry itself?
Maybe let me highlight to you who are the members of this committee. Because maybe you think that it's a one-man committee.
So what is it?
Okay, we have 14 members who are members of the committee. But above that, we have 4 permanent secretaries who are also members on an ex-officio basis. That's the permanent secretary of Justice, permanent secretary of local government, agriculture, and I think it's finance, the last one. But we also are having the chairman of the Land Commission as a member. I think it's Dr. Barre. We also have members of the war veterans. We have members of the youth, women that are involved, lawyers. We have constitutional lawyers who are involved, who are members. We have bankers, and we have the CEO of the Sovereign Wealth Fund. Okay, just to name it, and government, other government officials who are also members representing government. So it's an implementation committee, and it makes sure that all the people that are going to be participating in this process are incorporated in it, so that when the process is being implemented, no one is left behind. Okay. So what we have even further done is that we have then come up with some committees as ourselves. We came up with the legal subcommittee. We also came up with one for surveying and planning, came up with one for finance and evaluations, okay? Came up with one for stakeholder management, and stakeholder not management, but engagement, okay? To be able to manage all these processes. And in each one of these processes are government, all those 4 government ministries that I've just mentioned are participating in each one of them. So our role is to implement, as I said earlier. It is to assist in the implementation. Let me give you an example. If, for instance, there's a A2 farmer who wants to get title on the land, where do they go? They make an application to the Minister of Agriculture. From Agriculture, the Minister of Agriculture will then see, oh, do you have an A2 farm? So, and I'm talking about the process. Do you have what do you have? Do you have an offer letter or do you have a lease? They'll then look at it. Was it surveyed? Okay, it was surveyed. From there, it is given value. Okay. The valuators will give that land value. When they're given that land value, guess where it goes? It goes to the Ministry of Justice, Deeds Office, who then issue. In fact, before we do that, they're given a contract, which is signed by the minister, okay, because the Act, the Acquisition of Land Act and also the Land Commission Acts are all managed by the Minister of Agriculture. And so the minister will then sign an agreement between this farmer and the farmers themselves. Then they go and are issued with a deed. But the deed is not issued by the Minister of Agriculture. It is issued by the Minister of Justice through the Justice Registry. And the money is paid. Where is the money paid? It is paid to an account, a consolidated revenue fund account, which is held by the Ministry of Finance. What are we doing? We are making sure that this process is seamless, because it is encompassing all these people. When you have a complaint, where do you go to? You will go to the Land Commission. And the Land Commission is going to look at your query, and they are going to then address that query or hand it over to the Minister of Agriculture. So we have no distortion whatsoever.
So in other words, you're saying when it comes to certain disputes that may arise related to land disputes, ownership and access, the committee, your committee will be addressing these?
No. If there are any such, we will really just direct them to the specific commission, to now Dr. Barry, who handles this. And that's what she's been doing, and that's what the mandate is. It's not a mandate.
So mandate, in terms of disputes, that's not your area. Let's come back to the indicators, because while we're talking about a process here, one would say, how then will you then measure this land tenure implementation process? What indicators?
Okay, let me go back a little bit. Remember what I said. Farmers were not able. You know, if you get a 99-year lease, in that lease, let's start from the offer letter. If you get an offer letter, it's just an offer, okay? It says you have been allocated this piece of land and you are going to be allowed to do X, Y, Z on this land, right? But the government, through the Ministry of Agriculture, could then go and take it back for whatever reason, whether justified or not justified. They can take, within 7 days, they can be able to take that piece of land back. On a lease, the minister could actually go back and take that piece of land from you after 90 days. They can just give you a notice of 90 days, and they'll be able to take that piece of land. Now imagine someone wants to invest on that piece of land. They will not be able to do so. When the president, not me, I have no land to give, but when the president then issues this individual farmer with title, they are then guaranteed to be able to invest on that farmer, knowing that no one is going to be able to take that land away from them. And that gives confidence to anyone. And as a result of that, then the bank is also willing to give this farmer access to finance. because currently they can't. How can you give someone access to finance on an offer letter? I mean, just imagine you and you want to buy my company. If you can, you want to buy my company, and then I give you an offer. And on the basis of that, you want to go and get a loan from a bank. On the basis of offer, they'll laugh at you.
So let's touch on the issue of the capital aspect to it, because I think this is where one of the other issues is emanating from. Wanting to understand the land tenure implementation process itself, and in terms of ensuring that the farmer is secure even when they have those title deeds. Make us understand, how does this then work, your committee, and ensuring that the farmer who will be getting this piece of land or that title deeds and having to deal with the bank, they won't have to feel that they may have to face a challenge, a similar challenge where looking at historical challenges that have happened. Many farmers didn't manage to access capital for this piece of land. What's so different this time around?
Okay, so remember, this land belongs to the government. It doesn't belong to the bank. The land belongs to the government. If you look at the total value of this land that we're talking about, it's in excess of, the actual value of the land is around $20 billion, okay? There is no bank that can give a mortgage for that land. So what the banks are actually merely doing, they are administering the mortgage that this farmer is going to get on this piece of land. Okay, so the ultimate owner of this land still remains government. It's not the bank that owns it. So when the bank is repossessing this land for whatever reason, or maybe the farmer has failed to pay, remember the owner is still government, okay? And so they will have to consult government, obviously, when they are doing that process. But one of the things that you must understand is that these farmers are supposed to be commercial farmers, not subsistence farmers. So
this particular process is targeting the commercial farmer.
Yes.
This is where we need to be.
Yeah. So when you have decided, when you were applying to get this piece of land, you were saying, I want to be a commercial farmer. And the risks that are associated with being a commercial farmer, right, are that you must make sure that you work the land so that you can be able to pay your dues. Okay. So, and that's the process. And this is one of the issues that we're struggling with. And government was continually funding these programs, and the farmers some of them were unwilling to pay for whatever reason. So there was no management process that was allowing to do this. So the bank is just coming in to manage the process of the ownership structure. Now, one of the things that the president did, and I always say this, and I said it earlier in one of my presentations, that this is one of the biggest empowerment programs in the world. I say that. And I say this because, as I say to you, the land is supposed to be, the value is around $20 billion. But what the president has done is that he has said, I want this farm to allow this farmer to borrow, the very farm. But when you are alienating for value, according to the Constitution, for value, the farmer must be able to pay for the very land that they are getting. So the president says, we must then give this farmer a lot of discounts so that you'll get a first mortgage on this farm, which is...
Maybe we'll have to cut you short. I know you have to finish your point, but we want to go back a little back to what you stated there, but we'll only come back to your point after this break. Mr. Tagwirei, we know you have so much to speak to this issue, but let's just take a short break, and when we come back, we will continue from your sentiments. This is Face the Nation. Welcome back. Once again, this is Face the Nation, facing the nation with very critical issues. And Zimbabwe being an agro-based economy, the issues of productivity, issues of title deeds become very critical and key in understanding the implementation process of the land tenure system. We still have in studio our guest. He is the Land Tenure Implementation Committee Chairperson, Mr. Kudakwashe Tagwirei. Thank you once again for staying on with us. And just before the break, we were looking to the issue of financing. And while we speak to how the farmer will feel secure in terms of their title deeds, however, I want us to go back a bit. It is obviously expected that once the farmers have title deeds, this will also unlock certain capital for them, among many other issues. However, there has been that fear that many might not be able to actually repay their loans. There is that fear, and banks end up owning large tracts of land. So taking advantage of the farmer, obviously, as the committee, let's talk to that.
Okay, very interesting, Monica. Some people have been saying that Kudakwashe Tagwirei wants to take all this land to himself because he can buy it, which I can't because I don't have $20 billion to buy this land. But you know, the way that this process is being implemented, and that's the reason why the committee is there, is that we have recommended, as provided in the Constitution, I believe it's Section 293, that only one family can have one farm. That's what is in the Constitution. So, in doing this, we then came up with how then do we make sure that this process does this? So we have used the national ID number to make sure that this happens. You know, remember, 289 of the Constitution, Section 289, says that any citizen of this country is allowed to have access to this land. A citizen is a person. It's not an institution. It's a person. And this person is identified by an ID number.
But is that enough to hold fort? Just the ID number?
Because the ID number represents a person. You cannot have multiple ID numbers. You can't.
But there have been allegations of certain ghosts.
Oh, well, I cannot go to that because that is something that the Minister of Home Affairs should be looking at. I am not part of that.
Is Home Affairs not working with the committee?
No, well, they should. They are in some way, but I'm saying to you that, again, if we have ghost accounts, that is a bigger problem that must be addressed elsewhere. That's not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about here is that when an ID is given to an individual, to a citizen of this country, the ID is a unique identifier to an individual. And so, when we are issuing a title to this farmer, the main focus point is the ID number. So, we will issue it on the basis of that number. Okay. So now when the bank takes this land, when the bank repossesses the land, because the bank cannot take land, and when they are repossessing it on behalf of the government, that's what happens. The bank cannot then own the land because they have no ID number. Only an individual can. I hope you follow.
So, this land will be going back to government. It's not the banks that will then allegedly be owning these large tracts of land.
Because they are just administrators.
Okay. Let's come back again. Since you did also speak to one family, one farm. So how do you then solve a situation whereby we have people who are allocated farms or land? These were children, now adults, and have their own families. How does this then work? How do you separate the two?
Okay. First of all, we are not the ones who allocate land. So I want to really emphasize this, that we would want to solve problems which are not ours. This is an issue for land commission, and this should be really addressed by them. But having said that, a farm was only allocated to someone who was above 21 years old. So there was never a minor who was allocated land. It's not possible, because you have to make sure that we have to look at the laws that are in the Constitution that define who a citizen is. And those are the ones who allocated this land. Okay, so I'm not sure how this, how a minor would have been allocated land. In my view, that was practically impossible. But again, if there were such instances, then the Land Commission would have dealt with that. Okay.
Okay. Having dealt with that, let's also speak about the war veterans. You did speak to the beneficiaries, some of the beneficiaries of the title deeds program itself. We have war veterans, we have women, we're talking about the youth, people with disabilities, obviously. Progress in terms of the implementation. How are you handling the issue of inclusivity, the issue of ensuring that there is that allocation throughout the different demographics as well?
Okay, again, I would say, we don't allocate land. And we do not take land that has been allocated to an individual. We don't. We have no capacity to do that. The land is allocated by Minister of Agriculture. It is, and it is supervised by the Land Commission. Okay. But having said that, if you read the statement by Cabinet when they were talking about putting up this security of tenure document, they were going to be focusing on ensuring that the war veterans are catered for. Primarily the war veterans, the women and youths and government as a whole. And in our provisions, what we have done is that there are certain discounts for certain groups of people, primarily the war veterans and government. But in terms of allocation of the land, we don't allocate it. It's allocated by some other ministries, yes.
You did say you are the implementers, but even as implementers, aren't you also part of the process itself in terms of even when we're speaking to the allocation? Because here, we want to understand. It's fair enough for you to try and separate your portfolio or your mandate, but then we cannot walk away from the mere fact that despite the implementation, we need to ensure that even as a committee, you understand that this process is seamless, like you're saying it will be.
Now, let me say, one of the problems that was also happening is that people who were allocated land, okay, were, for some reason or the other, because remember, there were many committees. There was the District Land Commission, then there was Provincial Land Commission. All these commissions would recommend certain aspects to the minister. And as a result, some people ended up losing their pieces of land for one reason or the other. Okay. Now, all these things obviously were being administered, and then obviously they'll then go and talk to the Land Commission to resolve these issues, right? So the process is, there were too many individuals who were involved in this entire process. But what we are only going to be looking at ourselves, we will not look at who was allocated land. As I said in my first statement, 380,000 farmers were allocated land, 380,000. We have no right to go and take land that has been allocated to someone and then give it to some other person. That responsibility lies with the Ministry of Agriculture together with the Land Commission. And they will then look at ensuring that that process has been as effective as you want it to be, okay? So I'm always wondering, and when people are talking about this, they say, okay, there are all these groups of people that have not gotten land. No, the commission has been in place, I believe, since whatever period that it is, I think over around 2017, somewhere there. And the commission has been there already. So what we can only do is to recommend to them, because it is not our work. So we will recommend, so obviously a lot of groups, like as I said, they are the war veterans who are part of us. They are going to come and recommend and say, okay. And what they actually do is that they tell us, gentlemen, you are taking too many, there are war veterans who are being prejudiced, where they are taking farms away from the war veterans. The Land Commission is there. The Secretary for Agriculture is there. And that, we will just take it from them and pass it to these people so that they make sure that that is looked at. So that when the security of tenure document is now coming into effect, it goes to the rightful owner. Again, I want to say, Monica, we do not allocate land. We make sure that they have security of tenure.
Security of tenure. And as we get to also understand more on this process, let's talk to how this title deeds program. The land tenure system will also contribute to agricultural productivity. But we will also take another break as we take to the program Face the Nation. Don't go anywhere. Welcome to the final segment, and this is a Face the Nation, very heated conversation. And as we get to understand Zimbabwe's land tenure implementation process, our guest continues to say they're not mandated to allocate land. They're simply implementers. Mr. Tagwirei, you're simply implementers, like you said. But we are looking to this process itself, the exercise itself. How is it going to contribute to agricultural productivity? And before you even respond, we are an agro-based economy. Zimbabwe's economy is actually projected to grow by about 6% this year. How will this land tenure process, how do you intend to ensure that it contributes to this?
Very good question. So, as I said earlier on, the value of this land is around $20 billion. That's the value of this land. Average price of land in this country, agricultural land, is around $2,000 per hectare. Okay. Now, what the president has done, and as I was going to say earlier on, the president has embarked on one of the biggest empowerment programs in the world, I believe, in the world. Because what he is saying, recognizing the fact that the farmer, this war veteran, who came from war, does not have any resource to farm this land. So what are they going to do? So the president says, okay, I want you to make sure that the farmer will be able to use that land as security when they're going to access finance from banks. That's what he said. So we then came up with some recommendations, and those recommendations will give this farmer discounts. Okay. And those discounts will make sure that the government is going to issue a first mortgage for the purchase of that piece of land, for the alienation, which is going to be some value. But it's going to allow this farmer to also be issued with a second mortgage for having access to finance to work the land. You understand, right? So, because you're allowed to have a second mortgage on any asset.
Does this also come with recommendations in terms of ensuring the farmer also gets lower interest rates?
So, I was going to get to that. Now, remember, we have, the farmer has paid some fee for this land, which is some amount. And most probably it's going to come to around maybe 10 to 12, maybe $13 billion, somewhere around there. Okay, when we include the urban land, most of that money is actually going to come from urban land. Maybe it's about $6 billion from the farmland. That money is being put in some fund. Okay, that money that you have paid, which has allowed you to be alienated that land according to the Constitution, and those constitutional provisions have been met, is going to be put in some fund. And that fund is going to allow the very same farm to access it so that they can farm.
Who will be managing that fund?
It's the banks. And
Who will be monitoring the banks in terms of the management?
Minister of Finance. And that's their mandate.
But where do you come in as a committee?
No, and that is the process that we have put in place. And so as I said to you, we have put in place that there must be a fund. And this fund, part of that money is going to be used to pay some obligations that government has, but some of that fund is going to go to infrastructure, and some of that fund is going to go to the farmer themselves, so that they can have access to finance. Now, remember, the owner of the money determines the rate. And that's what we always do, isn't it? The owner of the money. So if it's the banker's money, obviously they're going to then determine the exchange rate. But this is government money. So obviously the government, because they have an interest in making sure that the farmer farms is going to provide lower interest rates.
Sustainability. How are you going to ensure sustainability?
Okay, and again, this is the work of this committee to make sure that it's sustainable. We want to make sure that we put processes, not people. Processes allow sustainability.
You're going to put, they're not there.
No, okay. You are becoming more like a Zimbabwean.
Let's understand that.
Who wants to catch someone out? Okay, the processes, we are making sure that the processes are there. Let me say, obviously there are many processes that have already been put in place by government, okay? But because we're in the implementation phase, if you understand IT, yeah, we put processes in place and we then begin to ensure that they are seamless. And that is the 18-month period that we have to make sure that those processes are seamless, okay? So the processes are there and we are going to continue to monitor them for the next 18 months and make sure that they work seamlessly. But having said that, now because they have access to finance, because the very same fund is going to be used to build infrastructure, that is how our economy is going to grow. And not only that, remember that we have put mortgages on this farm. It means that government has also got an asset, right? You know that our debt in this country is around $21 billion, okay? With the one single stroke of genius from this president, he has solved the issue of the farmer who did not have access to finance. He has made sure that the constitutional provisions are met, that this farmer has been alienated this land for value, that they can be able to transfer it to whoever they wish, as long as that person is a citizen of the country. Those provisions have been met. But not only that, now the government has an asset. And if you are a business person like I am, one of the things that you try and avoid is to be insolvent. And you have heard these comments, everyone saying, Zimbabwe is insolvent as a country.
So is this like store of value of some sort?
No, we are not. No, we're not. In fact, I can just say with two geniuses, the Mtapa Investment Fund, one stroke of genius. We have value. I'm told it's about $16 billion. With this second stroke of genius, the government has an asset which is valued at over $10 billion. Within 6 months, the president has managed to make sure that this country is solvent, while ensuring that the farmer has got cheap access to finance. And that within the next 10 years, the farmer is going to develop and become better, and then he's going to transform that farm because he has security of tenure. And making sure also that the siblings, the war veterans' children, are not worried that this farm that their father was paid for is going to be taken by some stroke of pen, and that we are going to use the same laws that we use when we are transferring wealth from a deceased estate to the existing individual. So this is one of the best programs that I know that this world has taken. And I think I want to thank the president for doing such an excellent job. And I am so excited to be part of it, actually.
You're very confident in this land tenure exercise. All right. You spoke about the war veterans, and clearly the land issue has a historical significance. Let's speak to the significant role of the war veterans themselves, like ensuring the reforms, even the implementation itself, align even with the liberation struggle objectives.
So the liberation objective was that we are going to take the land from those who stole it from us. I'm just using crude words. And make sure that it goes to the beneficiaries of this country, right? So what government did is that initially it took the land from the people and put it in this place. And then now they are doing the second part in this dispensation they're now doing the second part of making sure that the would-be beneficiaries have been given their land. How do you alienate land? If you look at that definition, you are literally transferring the rights. So government is transferring the rights from itself, government, to the would-be beneficiaries, the 380,000 people. Now, you want to then say, this land was for everyone, for the 14, 15 million people of this country. How then are the 14, 15 million people benefiting when only 380,000 people were allocated the land? How are they benefiting? They are benefiting in this way. When the president is alienating for value, that money which is going in this fund is now going to be used to ensure that those other people benefit from the services that are required in this country. That's how the economy is going to grow. And I believe that with this stroke of genius, our GDP is going to move from about 47 billion, where it is right now, to immediately in excess of $65 billion by this stroke of genius.
As we round up the conversation, let's get your message across to the various stakeholders. We're talking to the farmers and those who are obviously going to benefit from this exercise. What are you saying to the nation? Okay.
I was looking at something that someone gave me. It says that when there is a storm, there is an animal. There are two animals that recognize that the storm is coming. There's a cow and there's a buffalo. But their reaction to the storm is that the cow runs away from the storm. And when it's running away from the storm, it will, obviously, the storm is going to catch up with the cow. And the cow is going to be in this storm over a long period of time. The buffalo, on the other hand, goes directly into the storm. Obviously, because of its strength, it's going to endure, but the endurance is going to be for a short space of period of time. I'm saying to Zimbabweans, we must not fear what God has given us, what the president has given us. We must take it and use it and face it head on. Let's not run away from it. Let's use this land. The president is creating wealth in us by giving us this land. There are going to be millionaires from just working this land. And lastly, I want to say that when you look at the Israelites, when they moved from Egypt to Canaan, they were given their land. They were actually given their land. Each family was given a piece of land which was identifiable. Okay. Moses or Joshua did not own the land. He actually gave it to them. When you go to Israel right now, the GDP of Israel is around maybe $300 billion. It's on the basis of their agricultural reform. And this was on the basis of the decisions that were made at that time. So we must not fear. We must just look at this head on. And from that, we are going to have wealth. We are going to have wealth. And that's what I want to leave to Zimbabweans. If you want to be wealthy, take this challenge head on, and we will be successful. Thank you.
Like you said, take the challenge on if you want to be wealthy rather. Obviously, you did say it's a stroke of genius on the part of His Excellency. And you said the land tenure implementation process will solve a number of issues, including the multiple farm ownership issue. Would like to say thank you very much for joining us on Face the Nation, and we hope we will be coming back to you as we take stock and look to the progress that your committee will be implementing. Mr. Kudakwashe Tagwirei, thank you for facing the nation with us.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
The chairperson of the Land Tenure Implementation Committee, Mr. Kudakwashe Tagwirei, talking to us about Zimbabwe's land tenure implementation process. Well, they do say wealth is in the land. So what are you waiting for? Get that land. This has been Face the Nation, the crew behind the scenes. My name is Monica Chanda. Till next time, it's pleasant viewing on ZBC TV.